A taxi driver charges $3 for the first mile of a journey and 50 cents for each additional mile. So for the first mile, the taxi driver charges $3, and for each additional mile, the taxi driver charges 50 cents. So we want to calculate the cost of a 9-mile journey. And so the cost of a 9-mile journey, well, we have to account for the first mile, which is going to be 1 times 3, because the first mile, he charges what? $3. So it's going to be $3 for the first mile. Now, how many miles are left? Well, if it's 9 miles and you already account for the first mile, that means that there are 8 additional miles. So it's going to be 8 times 50 cents. And so that means that the cost for a 9-mile journey is going to be $3 for the first mile, and 8 times 0.5 is definitely $4. And so we have $3 plus $4, and that's going to give us what? That's going to give us $7. And so that means that the cost of a 9-mile journey is $7. Next, it says that the taxi driver charges $3 for the first mile of a journey and 50 cents for each additional mile. Another journey costs $13.50. Find the length of this journey. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to account for the first mile. So the first mile, how much is the cost for the first mile? But the cost of the first mile is $3. And so we say $13.50 minus $3. And when we subtract these two, we get $10.50. Next, we have to account for the other miles. And so we know that the taxi driver charges 50 cents for each additional mile. And so we take 10.50, which is the amount remaining after you already account for the first mile. So that's $10.50, and we divide it with 50 cents. And when we divide these two, we get 21. And so that means that the length of his journey is going to be 1 mile, right? And that is accounted for the $3, plus 21 miles, and that's accounted for the $10.50. And so the total length of his journey is going to be 1 mile plus 21 miles, which is 22 miles. And that's the length of this journey. Now that we already determined that, we have to move on to the next question, which states, write down the formula for finding the cost for a journey of m miles. So they want us to determine, or they want us to write down a formula for finding the cost for a journey of m miles. And so this right here is the answer, which is C is equal to 0.5, open bracket, m minus 1 plus 3. This is the formula that I believe is the correct answer to this question. But we can check and test if this formula works, if this formula is accurate for finding the cost for a journey of m miles. And so let's check it, right? So we're going to check this formula. And so if we have 1 mile, right? If we have 1 mile, how much should that cost? What is the cost for 1 mile? Now, if we just use calculations, we know that 1 mile is going to be equal to $3. Why is it $3? It's $3 because the cost of the first mile, like we said before, is $3. Now, if we use the formula, right, we know that m stands for the number of miles. And so in this case, m would be equal to 1 because the number of miles is just 1. And so we say 0.5, open bracket, in place of m, we put a 1. So this is 1 minus 1 plus 3. Now, what is 1 minus 1? 1 minus 1 is 0. And so we have 0 times 0.5. So that means that this whole thing is 0. So we have 0 plus 3. And 0 plus 3 is $3. And so using the formula, we are able to determine that the cost for 1 mile is $3. And so the formula works for 1 mile. Now let's try 2 miles. Does the formula still work? Now, if we were to perform calculations for 2 miles, we'd say that 2 miles is going to be $3, right, for the first mile, plus 50 cents for the second mile. And so that means that the total cost for 2 miles is going to be $3.50. Now that's just using calculations. Now let's use the formula. The formula states that 0.5 times m minus 1 plus 3. Now, what is m? In this case, m is 2 because the number of miles is 2 miles. And so we say 0.5, open bracket, 2 minus 1, close bracket, plus 3. Now, what is 2 minus 1? Well, 2 minus 1 is definitely 1. And so we have 0.5 multiplied by 1 plus 3. Now, what is 0.5 multiplied by 1? Well, 0.5 multiplied by 1 is just 0.5. And so we have 0.5 plus 3, and that gives us 350. So that means that the cost for 2 miles is that means that the cost for 2 miles is $3.50, which is the same thing that we got when we did it using the calculations. Okay, so that means that for 1 mile, this formula works, and for 2 miles, this formula works. How about 3 miles? All right. Okay, so for 3 miles, if we want to do the calculations, what would we do? Well, we'd say 3 plus, and the $3 accounts for the first mile. Okay, that's going to be $3. And then we have to account for the 2 miles in which you have to pay 50 cents for each mile. So it's going to be 2 times 50 cents. And so that gives us $4. So using the calculations, we get $4 for 3 miles. Now let's use the formula. The formula states that 0.5, open bracket, m minus 1, close bracket, plus 3, where m is the number of miles. Now in this case, the number of miles is 3. So that means that we substitute 3 here. So in place of m, we put 3. So we have 3 minus 1 in brackets, and 3 minus 1 is definitely 2. So we have 0.5 multiplied by 2 plus 3. Now 0.5 multiplied by 2 plus 3 is 4. And so that means that the cost, based on using this formula, the cost for 3 miles is $4, which is the same thing that we got when we used our calculations. And so that means that this formula is accurate. It worked for 1 mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, and it will work for 4 miles, 5 miles, and the list goes on. And so this formula is definitely accurate. And that's the answer for this question.